Yeah, Wellesley is, I'm applying ED there.
Okay, that's what I thought. Since I'm one of your recommenders, I think I read that.
So I think we'll get started and people will just struggle in. So thank you everybody for coming. This event really means a lot to me. It's been a lot of work and a lot of planning, and I'm glad we're finally doing it. Here's our agenda for today. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about this event, how it was started, what I hope it has for impacts. And then I'm excited for our three presenters, my chemistry teacher and my very first role model in science, Dr. Renee MacDonald, an organic chemistry professor at Smith College, Dr. Maren Buck, and a teacher who inspired me so much in just 3 weeks, Mr. Scott Betournay. And then there will be time for questions and activity to explore the connections of organic chemistry and a discussion about encouraging women in STEM. So first, what's this event all about and how did it get started? So this is my Girl Scout Gold Award project. I've been a Girl Scout since I was a little daisy in preschool, and I'm currently at the ambassador level. Last year, I decided to pursue the Girl Scout Gold Award project, which is the highest award in Girl Scouting. It's equivalent to the Boy Scouts Eagle Scout status. It requires girls to choose a real world issue that impacts their community, brainstorm sustainable, long lasting solutions, and spend a minimum of 80 hours working on their idea. So it's sorry, my Wi-Fi just went out. Okay. So as I was saying, the Girl Scout project is a lot of work, but it has a lot of benefits, like a better community, scholarships, and a good brag on college applications. So how did I choose to incorporate organic chemistry into my Girl Scout project? To be honest, I don't really know. I never wanted to be a chemist when I was little. Before high school, I had nothing to do with science. I didn't like it at all. I wanted to be a poet. And then I took a required class in my high school, honors chemistry, and it was with Dr. MacDonald. At first, I didn't like it and I wasn't great at it. I didn't understand the math. I didn't understand the quantum mechanics. I didn't understand how to not fail. And then I started focusing more, asking questions, staying before and after class, talking to Dr. MacDonald, using resources other than our textbook. And I started to understand it. Like everything related to chemistry, it was difficult, but I'm glad I worked for it. During the second half of the class, I fell in love with stoichiometry. So for those of you who don't know, stoichiometry is how chemists use ratios to calculate amounts of reactants and products. And suddenly I was combining math and chemistry and I was getting the right answers. So that was pretty cool. I decided to sign up for the next organic chemistry class, which was AP chemistry. It was harder, but I still liked it a lot. And then when it came to choose the next year's courses, I signed up for the final chemistry class offered by my school, which was organic chemistry. Though school was online at this point and Zoom classes were kind of tricky, I still fell completely in love with organic chemistry. I loved how it had everything I adored from advanced chemistry and honors chemistry, and it could be applied to basically anything living: human health, animal science, environmental science, and so on. It's known in our school as the most difficult class, but it made me realize that for the rest of my life, I want to study organic chemistry. So when it came time to choose a topic for my Girl Scout Gold Award project, the answer was clear: something to do with organic chemistry. After a lot of brainstorming, hours and hours, and talking to friends and teachers and advisors, I decided to combine organic chemistry with one of my other main passions, which is gender equality. As many of you are aware, there's a serious lack of representation in chemistry, and especially organic chemistry. And I wanted to do something to encourage women of all races and sexual orientations and abilities to not just pursue chemistry, but pursue all the fields that accompany it, which include medicine, research, pharmaceutical design, and more. And that's how Orgo Essentials was born. It includes tutorials on concepts that are kind of in between general chemistry and organic chemistry to make life for college students a little easier, because organic chemistry is kind of known for going at a super fast pace and having lots of vocabulary and being completely impossible to understand. So hopefully my videos can help students slow down and understand the foundations of chemistry before they pursue the rest of Orgo. And Orgo Essentials also includes videos about role models in organic chemistry and biochemistry, plus fun videos to show that organic chemistry isn't actually that scary. It's the essentials that anyone could ever need to tackle Orgo. And this event is the final showcase in my project, which is my way of sharing all my work with the world. And thank you so much, everyone, for being here. So a lot of people haven't had the amazing opportunity to take organic chemistry in high school like I did. So I want to cover exactly what organic chemistry is. So organic chemistry is defined as the study of organic or carbon-containing compounds. And it can include simple compounds like carbon dioxide, which we all deal with every time we breathe, or it can include a lot of really complex molecules like proteins. Organic chemistry is a kind of young field as far as chemistry goes, because for most of history, scientists believed that organic compounds couldn't be synthesized by humans. They could only be found in nature. This belief was called vitalism, and it was the idea that organic chemistry held, or organic compounds held, a mysterious vital force that could never be replicated. In 1828, this all changed when Frederick Wöhler synthesized urea from 2 inorganic compounds. And this kind of marked the beginning of organic chemistry and the very first time that scientists synthesized an organic molecule. Nowadays, organic chemistry doesn't really look like synthesizing urea from 2 inorganic compounds. There are so many other fields integrating themselves into Orgo, like computer science, artificial intelligence, and so on. And as data becomes bigger and molecules become more complicated, it's becoming more and more necessary to organize that information from data science and programming and other fields. Another example of a field that works well with organic chemistry is environmental science and climate justice. In order to find creative solutions to the climate crisis, we all have to combine engineering, chemistry, biology, and policy making, and at the heart of it all is organic chemistry. With Orgo, scientists are working for cleaner energy sources, eliminating carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases from the atmosphere, and changing industrial systems so that emissions are slowed and halted. And now our first keynote speaker, Dr. Renee MacDonald. Just to introduce you, Dr. MacDonald was my chemistry teacher since 9th grade. She was my first real role model in science, and she's the reason for all of my interest in organic chemistry and my future goals. We're so glad you're here. I think you're muted. Yeah.
Thank you, Rachel. It's really a pleasure to work at a school that I can work with students like Rachel, and I feel really grateful that I have the opportunity to teach 3 levels of chemistry. I mean, I actually taught IBC years ago, which was where in 7th grade, these students were introduced to chemistry at a level that was really high school chemistry. So there's been students that I've worked with for 4 years, and the biggest, I don't know what the word I'm trying to say, but like the most satisfaction I have is to be able to actually mentor students like Rachel to, have a passion for something that I truly have a passion for. So just to give you a little background, I have a PhD in polymer chemistry, and I graduated from UMass Lowell in 1996. So when I was an undergrad, I actually went there for undergrad as well. My organic chemistry teacher was my biggest inspiration. Well, I should go back. My high school chemistry teacher was the one that made me fall in love with chemistry. And I knew right then when I was in that class that I wanted to be a chemist. So then when I had Orgo in college and everybody was moaning and groaning about it, and our professor was a woman who was stern as you could get them. And for her to crack a smile was very difficult, but I just admired her so much in such a male dominated field that she was just like, no, she was just so straight on, and I learned so much from her. And so I continue to actually speak with her right now through LinkedIn because of, COVID. So my research when I was in graduate school had to do with the degradation of polylactic acid or polylactide and the effect of chain crystallinity on the biodegradation of these stereocopolymers. And then I also worked with using enzymes to actually make polymers. So I used enzymes to make polycaprolactone. And so then after that, let me add to that. When I was writing my thesis for my PhD, I actually was pregnant with my first child. And so if anybody remembers who's been pregnant, how exhausted you are in the first trimester, I was at the computer really fighting to stay awake. It was so hard. And I was telling Rachel, one of the things I'll never forget, and it bothered me so much, but when I defended, I was 8 months pregnant, 8 months pregnant, and they were guys from my lab, and I was in mostly a male representative, group there. I was definitely a minority, not only gender wise, but, nationality. And I came in with my jumper, my pregnancy dress, rather large. My baby was 10 pounds when he was born. They're like, you wore that for your defense? And I'll never forget it. I was just like, I could not believe that they said that to me. Anyway, kept my head up. I defended. I felt really good about it. And I actually had landed a job prior to graduation. So when I graduated, I worked for a company that made surgical sealants. And so this company is collagen-based surgical sealants. And we were trying to derivatize collagen so that it would adhere to Teflon and tissue, like to connect the tissue with the Teflon. And as you know, Teflon is not one to adhere to much. So that was a challenge. And so I continued to be a research scientist. And then I got pregnant with my second son. And, being a research scientist, the hours are long. And, I decided that I needed to be home with my boys at that time. And then I proceeded to have 2 more children. So I have 4 children. My youngest child just went to Quinnipiac College for nursing. And so my oldest has graduated from college. And now, like when my youngest had actually got into kindergarten, that's when I decided to go back to work. And I had been a teaching assistant when I was in grad school to make money my freshman year. And I loved the teaching aspect of it. I really did. And at the time, I never thought I'd want to teach high school. And at the time, I also was thinking more money, and I look back and it's like, that's not what it's about at all. Like for me, I don't do my job for the money. So it's funny how the perspective changes as you get older. And so I went back to work full time when he was in first grade, and I went directly into teaching, and I've been at ASD for about 11 years now, and it is the most rewarding career I could ever imagine. As hard as it is, it's so rewarding. And, being able to have these students take organic chemistry as a chemistry major myself, if I were to have taken organic chemistry in high school, it's just remarkable, like how much easier it would have been in college, because it's known to be difficult in college. So you think, get a little heads up. So Rachel and Tyler, who's here, is taking Orgo now this year. And those students that do take Orgo with me, they've gone places. One of the students just graduated, is at Yale. and he's a chemistry major. I have a student that's a chemistry major at Roger Mudd. I have chemistry major at Tufts. So I feel so happy and grateful and proud to be in the lives of these kids. They're amazing, and Rachel's going to be amazing. So I think that's all, unless you have any questions or questions at the end, Rachel.
Questions can be whenever. If anyone has any,
Okay.
then go ahead and put them in the chat. Thank you so much, Dr. MacDonald.
You're welcome. You're absolutely welcome.
Next, I am happy to present Dr. Maren Buck. Dr. Buck is a professor at Smith College who researches polymer and organic chemistry and their applications in human health and biomedical engineering. Welcome, Dr. Buck. We're so happy you came.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you so much for the invitation. I put together a couple slides. Do you mind if I share my screen? Let's see. Oh, it's telling me it's disabled. That's okay. I can just talk through it. So as Rachel said, I am at Smith. I'm an associate professor in the chemistry department here. And my journey in chemistry, so I took chemistry in high school, but I actually really loved biology. So I went to college out in Tacoma, Washington at the University of Puget Sound, and thought I was going to go into biology and maybe do veterinary medicine or become a doctor. And then I took organic chemistry, and I didn't have the opportunity to take it. I had never heard about it, or all I knew is it was supposed to be the hardest class. And I went into it with trepidation and found that I just absolutely loved it. I had an inspirational professor who made it fun and interesting and relevant to me as a student. And I found that I just loved doing problems and solving mechanisms and coming up with syntheses of new molecules. And so I pretty quickly switched from a bio major to chemistry, and went on and eventually finished with my bachelor's in chemistry. And then I really didn't know what to do at that point, but I really what professors did. So I thought about going to grad school. And I went to grad school at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And I thought about a lot of different lines of research at that point. I considered some traditional organic chemistry, some more bioorganic chemistry. And as an undergrad, I had done undergraduate research on organic synthesis, making molecules for liquid crystal displays. And so I was really interested in sort of the more materials side of chemistry. And so I ended up joining a lab in engineering. My PI had joint appointment in chemical engineering and chemistry. So I was formerly in the organic division at Wisconsin, but worked in an engineering lab. And that's when I fell in love with polymers. And it sort of opened up a new area of organic chemistry that I, again, knew nothing about as an undergrad. But, the world around us, and I think, Renee mentioned this, like there are polymers and they're all built up of carbon and organic based molecules. And I just found it fascinating. So I worked on making polymers for depositing on surfaces to control surface chemistry and how like cells and proteins interact with surfaces. And I totally understand the Teflon problem. We thought a lot about how to change, adhere to Teflon, and it's not easy.
Not on a slimy lung does not like, no.
Yeah, which, is really beneficial when you're trying to cook dinner on a Teflon coated. So I through grad school, I thought a lot about, sort of career trajectories. And I'll say that when I joined the lab, I was the first and only woman in the lab. And my professor was young, but he had yet to take a female grad student. So I was very nervous about sort of being on my own in that environment. And so organic chemistry is historically, women are poorly represented, as is engineering and polymer science in general. And so it was pretty intimidating, but I think I'm really glad that I made the decision I did, because since that time, many women have joined my PI's research lab, and he ended up being one of my biggest champions. He was married to an organic chemist, so he understood sort of the challenges of being a young woman in chemistry, and he really had my back from the time I joined the lab. So I'm grateful that I did that. And then I went and did 2 years postdoc at California Institute of Technology, where I completely shifted gears and did some protein engineering to make biomaterials for tissue regeneration. But at the end of the day, when I came to Smith, I wanted to go back to synthetic organic chemistry. So now we do a lot of synthesizing polymers for assembling materials that can interface with both biological systems and development of sensors for environmental applications. We're trying to develop polymer-based soft materials that can sense the presence of, metals or something in the environment for environmental remediation. And working with the students, as being at Smith, I get to work with all women, which is fantastic. And they are amazing and get really invested in the work they do. And it's truly a pleasure to play a small part in their growth as scientists. So I'm more than happy to talk about any aspect of my journey. I have 2 kids at this point that I had early on in my time at Smith. And it's definitely challenging to balance, the home life, work, balance. I'm using that again. But it's so rewarding, both of them. And thank you again for including me.
We have remarkably parallel lives.
Yeah.
Because I worked in a plastics engineering because I had to make my films for degradation study.
Right, yeah.
And so, yes, it's in, the whole protein background too. So it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, same.
Thank you so much, Dr. Buck. It was really great to hear you speak. Finally, I'm very thrilled to present Mr. Scott Betournay. Mr. Betournay was only my teacher for 3 weeks over the summer, but I was so impressed with his scientific knowledge, his teaching style, and the way he brought everyone into the conversation around biochemistry and molecular biology. So I knew I had to have him speak today. Welcome, Scott, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much, Rachel. It doesn't seem long ago now, but it was such a wonderful summer to work with you and your classmates, and with our intern Hannah in the ASP. And you all were remarkable. We're a remarkable group, and I agree with Dr. MacDonald that I'm excited to hear where you all and what you all do, where you all go and what you all do in the coming years. I guess my professional story, I am a New Hampshire high school student. I went to Interlakes High School and had many wonderful teachers and classmates in many areas. I went to the Advanced Studies program as a student in 1996. Took Ancient Greece with Ann Duncan and my writing workshop teacher, Rebecca Koval. We're both fantastic people and mentors, really inspiring. Went to college, went to Bates College in Maine. Nancy Kleckner was my biology advisor, my kind of #1 mentor in the biology department. But I took only the minimum number of biology courses that were necessary to graduate, because I wanted to take as many different courses in as many different areas as I could. So Ann Dodd in education was a fantastic mentor. I had a minor in education. William Nero and Lucinda Williams, not the singer, but Dr. Williams' Intro to African American Studies was an amazing area that I explored a bit. Marcus Bruce, Religion and Film course, the first course I ever took in college, was fantastic. Will Corlett, Western Political Theory. Pam Baker, immunology. Just tons of fantastic mentors and people to look up to and get to know. After college, I taught for a year in Boston. Dawn DeRosa and Tracy Callahan were two of the amazing people with whom I worked, teaching at the Boston University School of Medicine's City Lab program, which does biotechnology, a program for high school students in the Boston area. I was an ASP intern a year after that, and there was a fantastic group of people with whom I worked again. And because I didn't take many biology classes beyond the bare minimums in my undergraduate work, I felt that I needed to do more, to take more, to kind of actually do what I wanted to do professionally in the sciences. So I spent 2 years at Plymouth State University, where I was teaching, where I was taking classes, undergraduate and graduate classes, almost all in the sciences, almost all in biology. And again, met some wonderful people, professors and mentors, Chris Shabbat, Len Reitzma, Susan Swope in biochemistry, are just fantastic people, and whom I still keep in touch with. But I didn't actually get a degree from Plymouth State. I went to East Carolina University, where I have my MS in biology. My graduate advisor was Dr. Lisa Clow, who is a brilliant woman, and now works as a program director for the National Science Foundation for Antarctic studies. At the time when I was doing my master's work, I was studying ecology up in Alaska, so the Arctic stuff. But I had a lot of side projects also, which were biochemistry and molecular biology related. My first kind of real job after that was teaching biology at Concord High School, which was amazing. Jane Voth was my mentor, who's a fantastic teacher, I think. And Lisa Boffinger, Jean Connolly, there were so many other wonderful people there to know. And now I'm at the St. Paul's School, where again, there are more people than I can list who have and who continue to inspire me, both teachers, colleagues, and all of the wonderful students that I feel I've been so fortunate to meet over the years. And certainly, Rachel, you're among that group. As far as organic chemistry goes, that's one of those courses that I didn't get to take at Bates, so I took that afterwards. And I don't I don't remember a lot of organic chemistry. I'm certainly not a practicing organic chemist, but it was huge. It's fascinating, and it was hugely important in building my understanding in biochemistry subsequent to that, which I do use a lot more of. And kind of one of the points that I thought was interesting was, I think the broader one's understanding and scientific base can become in high school and in college and in graduate school, if one goes there, the broader one's scientific base, the deeper one, and the broader and deeper, the more applied one can get, and the more connections one can make when one specializes. So for me, even though I don't practice organic chemistry anymore, being able to call upon what I learned, if I need to, is I think really, really helpful. And I think I wanted to speak just briefly about, I don't know, are you going to ask us other questions, Rachel?
Yeah, I was planning just a few questions for everyone.
Okay, maybe I'll pause here then.
Okay. I just wanted to ask everyone, what are some applications of organic chemistry that you think are the most important, and how do you think those applications are going to grow in the next coming years?
I can start. So, I think we've hinted at it, a lot of them. Synthesis of drug molecules is hugely important, and I think we're constantly coming up against challenges associated with most relevant would be bacterial resistance to the drugs we have. And I think continued innovation in terms of modifications to known drugs or the synthesis of new drugs is hugely important. Organic chemistry plays a big role in synthesizing drugs to treat COVID, for example. And so I think pharmaceuticals is a big area that will continue. It's been big, but will continue to grow. And you already mentioned it, environmental challenges. I think organic chemistry has a really big role to play that isn't talked about a lot, but we do certainly have a big role in both environmental remediation as well as new forms of renewable energy.
I can add to that. In one of the things that I keep saying to the students that I work with, which I personally find fascinating, is, the organic chemistry of proteins, right? And so everything right now in the pharmaceutical world, or I guess in medicine, is so central to protein science, and proteins are organic molecules. And so I think that is fascinating. And I personally, if I could do some research myself, I would like to do that. And so my husband actually just recently changed jobs, and he's working with a biotech company for the first time, and they're working with DNA and mRNA, and that's all organic chemistry. So it's everywhere. And going back to the environmental piece, my graduate lab group, we were doing biodegradable polymers, and we had some people working with chitosan and using that for oil spills. And so, it's just, working with those types of biopolymers are very difficult because they're not like our synthetic polymers. I see you, Maren, are like, yes, they are very difficult to work with. But they have such tremendous opportunities, I think, in the future. So I've seen personally, worked in a lab group with the environmental piece as well as the medical device piece, because polylactide is actually one of the things that's used as, implants in the body and so, it's everywhere. And that's one of the reasons why I love organic chemistry, not just the challenge of it, but just, and like what Rachel said, it is everywhere. And when you understand the fundamentals of chemistry and can explain that, to me, that's so amazing. Like, I get goosebumps. I'm like the biggest Orgo nerd going, I'm telling you. Maybe not, maybe, Dr. Buck and Rachel, you're probably one of them too, but there's not many of us, I can say, that are like that, but it's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Another question I wanted to ask is, how can we encourage gender equality in classrooms and organic chemistry in labs?
Yeah, that's so important. I think, historically, it's not been the case. And I firmly believe, and a lot of data has shown that diversity of backgrounds, diversity of experiences, diversity of individuals really contributes to more advances, and diversity of thought and diversity of ways of approaching problems. And I think, we, depending on who you are, can approach it in a variety of ways. As a student, I sort of sought out mentors who supported me and my goals in chemistry. And I continue to talk to those mentors to this day. I can't emphasize enough how important mentors are in making progress in your own personal life. I think, from now that I'm on the other side as an educator, I strive really hard to make my classrooms inclusive and welcoming to everyone, so that everyone can grow in their own way. And I think it's important to embrace failure, because we all fail, and it's really easy to be discouraged and think that you can't do something because, you know, maybe you struggled at first. And we learn from that. I always tell my students that, to me, I love the wrong answers, because we learn more from that than we do from the right answers. And so embrace that and learn and realize the power of not yet, that you will get there. Just take some time.
I agree 100% with the learning from failure. And I think right now there's, you know, the student population is not on board with that. You know, I think you have to have a little wisdom and lived through the failures yourself to really appreciate how much you learn from it. And I'm really trying to help my students think about the focus on learning and not so much the grade, and just like get that like haze out, you know, because with the learning, the grade comes, right? And so, and I, you know, the whole thing in our school, I don't know how the population in terms of gender, you know, in terms of, you know, percentages, how it is now, but in the past, in my classes that I taught, it was very heavy on the male population, especially because we're a STEM school. And I think probably Rachel's class was probably like the most girls I had actually seen in one grade. And they're strong, they're hardworking, they're amazing. And I'm seeing more girls come in, you know, to STEM and getting super excited about chemistry. So it's and I like to see the girls intermingle with the guys too, because they add something to the lab group. Usually, no offense, gentlemen, but they're just like, they're kind of, they've got the organization down, and, you know, they've kind of put some sense of like, I don't know, organization. I guess sometimes the boys are like, let's do this. And the girls are there to be like, okay, let's do it right now. Let's write it down, you know, dude, look at the procedure kind of thing. So, you know, that balance, and that comes with all genders, but it's just what I have seen is that the girls tend to be the ones that keep the things on task. Things are on task. So good.
I see that a lot too, and have read of studies that have shown faster cognitive development in many girls, putting them a year and a half, maybe sometimes 2 years ahead of their boy peers. I see it all the time at the high school level too.
Right. It's just, I've seen it. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and it's funny because even when I was in grad school, I tell this story all the time. You know, the guys they were always kind of, you know, loosey goosey a little bit. And one of the guys in my lab blew, you know, the ceiling tiles out of the ceiling and the drain because he had sodium in his flask. He was drying his solvent with it and and they had a little piece of sodium, and it was just like, wasn't surprising that happened. But anyway, happens to the best of us, I guess. Not me, I didn't do that, but we do make mistakes, and you learn not to do that.
The final prepared question I had for all of you was, if you could offer one piece of advice to someone who wants to go into organic chemistry, what would it be?
Don't give up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I kind of already said this, but find mentors, find a support network, and realize there are going to be bumps in the road. And, you know, this is true for, I think, any form of science and, you know, life. There will be obstacles, but don't give up, and trust your gut, and do what you love too. I think that makes, I mean, I love my job, and it makes coming here every day all the more enjoyable. Yeah.
I also think that you have to be very confident, because if you exude confidence, then, people are going to respect you more, in the sense where they're more apt to want to work with you. If you act sheepish and you're like, I don't know, it's just kind of natural that, people don't react the same way. So even if you feel uncomfortable, just be confident and just do your best. Yeah, and there are going to be bumps in the road, definitely. Science is that way. It's like, if I worked with a student who he took like 2 days to make something in the lab. This was like his senior year, and it spilled on the counter. And I tried to scrape up as much as I could for him, but his face of disappointment. But he ended up going to, Harvey Mudd for chemistry, despite that he was so devastated. I said, that won't be the last time that happens. You just have to, science is not always that forgiving. So don't give up. You have to keep working and be positive.
Following up, Renee, from what you said about confidence, I find I coach cross-country skiing also at my school. And one thing I emphasize, whether it's in athletics or whether it's in academics, is that preparation builds confidence. So as you've said, don't give up, work hard, and that hard work pays off in confidence, which brings all the things that I think you illustrated so well. This is a tough question, Rachel, just choosing one thing. But one thing I'll throw out there is self-care, is taking care of yourself, prioritizing sleep, is I think one of my best pieces of advice, but doing what we need to take care of ourselves: exercise, nutrition, and definitely sleep. Oh, and if one is away from home at college or graduate school or wherever, every now and then call home, talk with people from before you went there, be it your friends, family, siblings, touch base every now and then. I think that's just good.
I always tell my students, I never pulled an all-nighter in college, and I think it was to my benefit. Sleep is better than staying up all night to prepare.
We had a question from the audience. How can organic chemistry be used to develop a more holistic approach to medicine?
Well, a lot of polymers, which is obviously an aspect of organic chemistry, are biopolymers. And so these are coming from nature. And so those can, absolutely be a holistic approach. I don't know if that's what the audience was asking. But I know for me, I did a lot of work with polymers that were biopolymers, naturally, derived. So I think it's innate in organic chemistry.
Mm-hmm. And I think, we get a lot of our medicines from nature. And I think, in addition to just identifying new natural products that might have medicinal use, we can extract those natural products and maybe use organic chemistry to make small modifications to them in the lab, and perhaps find more potent drug molecules. I think as organic chemists, we can also make greener approaches to synthesizing medicinally relevant molecules. A lot of organic chemistry uses somewhat nasty solvents and reagents, and if we can develop greener approaches to that, then it is beneficial both just environmentally as well as medically. So those are the things that came to mind for me.
So some of the work that I did, just to add on to Dr. Buck, is that when I was working with making polymers, one of the things that we did was we made polymers with porcine pancreatic enzyme, which I developed a sensitivity to and then couldn't work with it anymore. But, I mean, that's a natural product. And so that is a way to work with polymers and smaller molecules to make polymers in a more natural sense. So there's a lot of that. There is like a great deal of that people don't always know, right? It's because they're not working in the field. So it's not all nasty. There is a lot of nasty, but it's not all nasty.
Tyler just asked, what's a standard day in the life of a practicing organic chemist?
It depends on where they're practicing. I can tell you as a bench chemist, it could be a very long day. So you work for the chemistry. And so I remember 12-hour days in the lab when you're synthesizing not just polymers, just doing organic synthesis. So again, or you could be on the more the background sort of thing, like the I don't know, the conceptual piece, right? You're doing research on what are things that could possibly be done theoretically. Well, then in that case, that would be not as demanding in terms of like being on the bench. So it's and when it depends on where you are. So as a PhD, typically you are a lead chemist and you have people, technicians working with you. So they may be running things that you wouldn't be having to be in the lab as long. And so you're more of like, the brain of it. So the longer you are in it, that's what I've noticed. I haven't been in that area for a long time because I'm a teacher, but it does evolve. So you really have to have a graduate degree to be practicing Orgo, in my opinion. But so, yeah.
Yeah, we've had, so I agree. I think, if you, with a PhD in organic chemistry, you tend to be the one, again, this is more on the industrial side, but the one developing and designing projects. One of the things that attracted me to this job and being, at a liberal arts college is the fact that I can balance my day between teaching, which I absolutely love, and being in the lab, which I equally love. And so I spend time in the lab with my students, troubleshooting and running reactions and doing that kind of thing. And then, my friends from graduate school that went on to industry, they initially spent time in the lab and, doing reactions, but as they've progressed in their careers, have moved on to more management positions. So it really does depend on sort of the area you go into, and you can get a lot of variation in it too.
Thank you so much. If we have no other questions, then Scott, did you say you have more to discuss?
Yeah, I wanted to, on the topic of, I don't have a ton of recommendations for how to improve equity and equality in sciences, but I do have a few thoughts on just the need for it. Like if science, and I'm speaking across scientific disciplines, and I think across all professional disciplines, like if our fields don't include everyone, then we're just cutting out talent. If we were just, if biology were just males, there goes at least 50% of all the talent, which means if there's X number of positions or projects to work on, you're diluting down your ability to tackle significant problems, if you don't include everyone. And I think as we probably talked a bit about this summer, Rachel. With the female brain, on account of having two X chromosomes, there's more to it than just numbers. In terms of the number of genes on the X chromosome and the number of cognition related genes, being over 1,000 on each chromosome. The Y chromosome has barely 100 genes, and they don't do much in terms of cognition. So increased neurodiversity for females, I think, is a big contributor to why we don't want to not include women in all professional fields. The problems our world faces are way too big to not have everyone at the table. And maybe I'll stop again there.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
If there are no questions, then I guess we'll move on to our activity. So this is the beginning of a mind map for the connections of organic chemistry. So I love organic chemistry partially because it's a field that's connected to so many other fields and applications. It can be used for, as we mentioned, the environment and industrial work and so many other things. So I'd love if everyone could click annotate. It should be at the top of your screen, and add your own ideas and connections to this map. No idea is too small. You can add individual projects you've worked on that connect to some of these fields. You can add giant fields. And even if you don't know a lot about organic chemistry, you probably learned something from our wonderful speakers that you can add to this map. And feel free to use all the colors and fonts that you want. Obviously, I used purple because purple is great. And feel free to discuss while you're adding too.
How do we annotate again? I'm sorry, I missed that.
You should be able to, at the bar at the top of your screen, there should be an annotate button.
Oh, view options. Oh, I see. Okay, thank you.
So just to talk a little bit about the fields that I put down as a beginning, I put protein technology because from Dr. MacDonald's classroom, I have learned that proteins are the basics of everything. We wouldn't be alive without proteins, and protein science is really coming into its climax right now and having so many new impacts. And CRISPR is one of them. We talked about CRISPR in Mr. Betournay's class, and we did a CRISPR experiment, and it was really fun. And it can be used to solve so many diseases and syndromes and just have cool reactions. Tyler and Tam and everyone, feel free to participate. It doesn't have to be everyone who's an expert contributing. There was a question in the audience about where's the legal part. Legal things can be involved in any of these fields, I think. We talked a little bit in Mr. Betournay's class about the trademark and patent parts of these applications and technologies.
It's funny you said that. I actually considered being a patent attorney when I was in undergrad, but I wanted it to be specifically in chemistry. But then I found out how boring patent attorney law is. So I'm like, okay, never mind. It was just interesting to me.
We've
I
recently
imagine
had
I imagine there's a lot of fields that would seem boring after one's taught high school or college.
Yeah, I love teaching high school students. So many people say to me, wow, like God bless you, or I don't know how you do it. And I think you have no idea like how wonderful these kids are. And it's just, I mean, granted there are groups that might be more difficult. I feel particularly lucky to work with the group of kids I work with because they're mostly motivated and they want to learn. So, but still, it's just to help them grow is unreal.
And now the second part of this activity is actually to make connections from the fields and applications that you've put on this map and gender equality. So for example, I think Dr. MacDonald put down immunotherapy for cancer. And one issue that's really prevalent for women right now is breast cancer and kind of the media attention and how it's skewed around that disease. And there's so much research, but I don't know like what areas it's in. So that could be one example.
I'm sorry, Rachel, so what do you want us to do with that?
So just kind of highlight the similarities between the fields that are on this map and some issues in gender equality and women's health, stuff like that.
I think that's one of the most critical ways that diversity is important is that we think about problems differently. And one of the most important things that comes to mind for me is I had a student, I teach a polymer chemistry class in which it's really organic chemistry to make polymers. And I have them do a design project where they think about how polymers could be used to address a particular problem. And this one student came up with polymers that could be used as like an implant for women to treat. Now I'm forgetting what it treated, but it thought specifically about the female anatomy and how polymers and organic chemistry really could be used to address a particular disease that was relevant specifically for women. And I think because we have an intimate understanding of what it means to be us, you can think of solutions that maybe men wouldn't.
So I really, really like this map that we made. If everyone's done contributing, then I'm actually going to take a screenshot because it looks really cool and I think it's really inspiring.
I added genetics as a connector to biochemistry, and there's a lot of aspects of our genetics, our human genetics, that differ a little bit between, and sometimes more than a little bit, depending upon the sex chromosomes that we have, and appreciating as we say in athletics, that girls are not little men. Like, they're not little boys. There's so much subtlety, difference, and significant difference to appreciate and understand. And if one isn't going to look at that, then you're missing a huge amount of the big picture. Yeah.
I agree. I think we need to celebrate our differences.
This looks really cool.
Oh, shoot.
I'm going to move on to the next part of this event, if I can figure out how to clear the annotations. Oh gosh. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then reshare it because I don't know how to clear the annotations. So I just wanted to wrap up this event by saying a few things. So first of all, just by being here and speaking and participating, you've already taken the first step towards gender equality in science. Education and awareness really are the solution, and they help women everywhere in ways that you can't even see and you might never feel the impacts of. Just by making people around you aware that there is an issue, that it's not just in our minds or imaginary. You're building a foundation for legislation and policies and other solutions. And you're helping other young girls find their role models in chemistry and biology and molecular biology and mathematics and computer science and all sorts of STEM fields. And I just want to say thank you. Next, I have a form that I made just so that people can send their feedback of this event. It's totally optional, but I'll put it in the chat. And just so that we can figure out like what went well and what people learned. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about more ways to help women in science. I'm not going to go super in depth because I could talk for hours about it, and there's not really just one solution. There's a whole variety of them, and it's a complicated issue with different factors and all sorts of aspects. But there are a few simple ways to start encouraging women in science. So first, interest in science really starts in childhood. All the psychological experiments and studies have shown this. So we have to start exposing young girls to women in STEM. Historical women like Marie Curie and Lisa Meitner, women you've worked with in all of your careers, female doctors, chemistry teachers, and there are so many resources online if you ever need to find even more female role models. And whatever you do, just don't isolate your conversations about science to male figures, because there's so much more to the story than that. Next, we can confront stereotypes about women and their roles and keeping women restricted to responsibilities and about family and other roles. We can all speak out, but we shouldn't speak out over the women in our lives. So just everyone, it's a good idea to do your share of chores and tasks and don't just let one person do it, no matter their gender. We can also work to make STEM fields a safer place for women in more welcoming environments by working against harassment in the workplace. So this can include codes of conduct and other policies. Finally, we can educate the educators. So teachers, professors, and other educators and people involved in education about these issues. Obviously, everyone here is pretty informed and aware of that there are issues, but a lot of people aren't. And a lot of issues really are passed down in schools. For example, math anxiety is often passed from teachers to their female students, which impacts their feelings about related fields like organic chemistry, for example. And so if we all make sure that the people we work with and learn with are aware of these issues, then that can make it a little easier for teachers and students. I know I already asked our speakers about this, but does anyone else have any ideas or suggestions for ways to encourage women in STEM fields? You can unmute, type in the chat. Even our speakers, if you have more things to say, feel free to speak.
I know personally for me, and Rachel, you've seen me in the classroom, I'm just like googly eyed over science. And so I like to try to make it not intimidating, right? And always be like, you can do this, you know, you can definitely do this. We'll do this together, step by step, ask me questions. And so I think if you can just exude positiveness and, you know, smile, even though now we're behind a mask, but you know, it's I see girls in my chemistry class like right now that are just like totally enthralled, and it makes me have goosebumps all over. Like they just can't get enough. They're sitting in the front and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And guys too, there are guys that are loving it too, which I love too. I just love people loving chemistry, but it's really cool to see the girls like just not intimidated by it. And I had this one girl the other day, and we were going over quantum, and it was our second day, and she's like, I feel oddly at ease today. I feel very relaxed. She's like, I can actually look at the equations and actually understand the concepts at the same time. And I feel really good about that. I'm like, yes, that's what we're looking for, making that connection. And then that just drives curiosity and excitement. So.
Definitely. Thank you so much. That actually wraps this event up. So thank you so much, everyone. Oh, Scott, did you have something to say?
One thing I was going to contribute is I think the value of talking with other people, and you all have said this also, get to hear people's stories, listen to people, get to know your teachers. In college, if one goes to college, find your professors outside of class sometimes, get to know them as people, learn about them, hear their stories, and pay attention, because there's so much fascinating, people are so fascinating, and we're here to support each other.
Mhm.
That it's that closing oneself off, one would really miss a lot in life if one didn't listen to and talk with other people. And so thank you so much, Rachel, for bringing us together to hear each other's stories. But this kind of conversation is just something to continue our whole lives, I think.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you everyone for coming. Feel free to stay if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you, Rachel. This was really, really awesome. I think these are the kinds of conversations we need to have.
Thank you
Been
so
really
much.
fun. Yeah.
Yes, I'm just so proud to be your teacher and see you grow over this, you know, these 4 years. And it's why I do the job I do. And I think you're going to be a great inspiration for other women in the future. And just stay positive, work hard, keep your head up, and you're going to do amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I wanted to remind you quickly that this recording will be available online for everyone to use. I can send a link to the website that my Girl Scout project is actually on. Let me copy and paste that really quick. And feel free to share the link with any students or people that you know.
One thing to add, my favorite organic chemist professor, she also is a fantastic cook. And so one of her projects that she did, as she had some undergrads doing research for her, and they were studying the compound that makes people cry from onions. Oops. And so I learned a lot about just cooking in general, and she took us out to dinner to a really great Chinese restaurant. And so I never would have expected that from her, because she was scary for a while. I mean, I saw through the scariness. Like, I was a little scared, but you got to get to know them. That, like Scott said, they're real people, and it's great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sure
Yeah.
I'm glad you found it interesting. I know you're not an organic chemist, but I'm glad you came.
I'm inspired now to learn more about organic chemistry. Because when I was in high school, I'm 62 years old. So when I was in high school, sciences were dominated by males, and very aggressive males that did not look kindly upon women slowing down the class activity. And so I was one of those people who liked precision. And so having them just make up answers to their compounds and stuff like that irritated me to no end. So that's when I decided sciences aren't for me, because, you know, I want to be precise. So now I wish I would have had the chance to do sciences now, because this just sounds totally fascinating. So I am going to learn on my own.
Come visit me. Sue, you should come. You can come sit in one of my classes.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Maybe.
that would be cool.
If you could ever get away from, your classes.
Yeah, I know my little guys.
Your little guys. They're adorable.
Yeah, because this was just so cool.
It is.
I'd love to come too, Dr. MacDonald.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I anytime. I love visitors.
I wish I could attend many of my colleagues' classes in all kinds of disciplines. It's just, life's too short.
I agree.
Do
Like
more.
we used to have a Dr. Frosdell that worked there. You remember Sue, Dr. Frosdell, brilliant guy. I'm pretty sure his lab mate in college was a Nobel laureate, and so I wanted to sit in his classes so bad, because he, as much as I know calculus from college, and but he had this way of teaching the students that was so different and interesting, and I wanted to pick his brain, so I did sometimes. But
Yeah, he was very open-minded and inclusive, and he had a gentle way about him, but you could tell by listening to him that he was a brilliant man. And I enjoyed our teacher workshop simply because he would talk about things and would be like, wow, like you said, Renee, I would have loved to have seen his classes.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and the whole growth, the growth mindset. Remember how much she was into that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, he was one that I would love to sit in.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I actually need to go fix something in the lab, but thank you again so much for the invitation. It was great to meet all of you. And yeah.
Great meeting you, and I look forward to communicating later.
Yeah, got your email here.
All right, great, excellent.
Right.
Thank you so much for coming.
Nice to meet you.
Wonderful day, everyone. Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel.
Thank you for coming.
Bye.
Thank you, Rachel. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Was it over? Did I miss it? Darn it.
Yeah, it's done now.
Okay, it said 2 to 4, so I thought I'd go for it. I had an MIT conference all day online, so
That's so cool.
I guess I will go back and listen to my MIT conference more.
This
Did you record it so
fine.
that we can
Yeah,
watch
this
it
will be
later?
recorded and online. So I'm sure we can share the link with you.
Yay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Bye.